You know, you've been part of these two venture firms who have had incredible talent pipeline that have gone on to do amazing things. And Peter Thiel and JD are also involved in the fund. And so walk me through the origin story.
The vice president, JD Vance, Peter Thiel and I had all been connected through our time at a fund on the West Coast called Mithril. And there are a bunch of other people. One guy's co-founder of Anduril. One guy's running Linux Foundation. One woman is now working at the Defense Innovation Unit.
Wow. Co-founders in the fund are Falon, Donohue, who's also co-founder of Reindustrialize.
Yes. JD Vance, my former partner and our vice president. It was something that he and I had been ideating on for a long time because we were living in the Bay, and it just felt that everyone was investing somewhat mimetically in the same way. It just felt like the ideas, like the innovation curve had just totally flattened. When we launched this fund back and started raising the capital in 2019, we just thought there was this white space in the market. If you're truly focused on solving the need to solve problems in our country, there was a lot of opportunity. These founders existed, and they still exist, and they just maybe weren't sitting in the Bay. I sort of feel like the most contrarian thing to do now is like actually invest in companies that can solve the problems now. My question is always like, can we build a true monopoly?
Colin Greenspon, co-founder Narya VC. Welcome to We the Builders.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us more about Narya, and we'll dive a little bit into your background because you've been part of these two venture firms who have had incredible talent pipeline that have gone on to do amazing things, and we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, sure. So Narya is an early stage venture fund, and I guess that term, as we'll probably get into, many terms in venture are a little bit buzzwordy and kind of need to dive into what they actually mean. But so for us, early venture it can be as early as pre-seed, where founders just are really starting out with an idea and a thesis as to why they want to go after a certain market. The market may exist, it may not exist, it may be a new market that they think will emerge. And so we can go very early there, all the way through seed deals and Series A. And so that's sort of how we define early stage. Think of us as writing, on average, the sweet spot being $3 to $5 million check, where typically we take a board seat, don't have to, and getting ownership from 7.5% to 20% of a company. But again, everything we do is bespoke, and so that despite saying that doesn't mean we can't do later stage deals. And it's really just about how close a company is to our core thesis, which really, in some ways, is super simple. It's very, we want to back founders solving like the need to solve problems in venture, and I'm happy to go into sort of how we think about that. But that's the simplest thing. We don't think enough VCs are doing that. And when we launched this fund back and started raising the capital in 2019, we just thought there was this white space in the market. If you were truly focused on solving the need to solve problems in our country, there was a lot of opportunity.
Walk me more through the founding and origin story. Your co-founders in the fund are Falon, right? Donohue, who's also, I'm pronouncing her last name right?
Donahue. Yeah.
Donahue, who's also co-founder of Reindustrialize.
Yes.
Right, which is this huge conference where we originally, communicated,
yes.
And Peter Thiel and JD are also involved in the fund. And so this 2019, right, that's when it all started. Walk me through the origin story.
Yeah, sure. So the vice president, JD Vance, Peter Thiel and I had all been connected through our time at a fund on the West Coast called Mithril. Peter was an investor in that fund, and JD and I were employees there, and JD and I worked very closely together at that fund. And subsequently, JD and I had then joined another fund in DC called Rise of the Rest, and that involved part of the thesis was investing in off the beaten path geographies, and we had gotten to know Falon through a lot of the work she was doing in the state of Ohio. She had a very early stage venture fund and had also been instrumental in thinking about ecosystem growth, not just in Columbus, Ohio specifically, but the state of Ohio more broadly, just how much potential there was there, given a lot of the industrial acumen that was in Ohio. And JD and I had been very bullish on the Midwest as a region, and Ohio specifically. And you're starting to see some of that play out right now. But it kind of became a no-brainer to bring her on board once we decided we were going to go start our own fund. And it was something that he and I had been ideating on for a long time because we were living in the Bay, and it just felt that everyone was investing somewhat mimetically in the same way. Everyone was still really focused on SaaS and as a result, enterprise software or consumer internet. And it just felt like the ideas, like the innovation curve had just totally flattened. And there was really a dearth of strategic risk capital going into the bigger ideas, the founders that were taking more risk, trying to actually solve these historically intractable problems, which in their minds could now be solved with certain advances in science and or technology, depending on what specifically they were trying to do. And the more we thought about this problem, the more we came to the conclusion that it was really like the issue that was permeating our asset class of stagnation and not innovating like maybe venture did in its early days was at the GP level. These founders existed and they still exist. And they just maybe weren't sitting in the bay. You have to get on the plane and go find them. They shockingly might be in a place where the real industrial acumen is. If you're a tooling and die company, can you build in Silicon Valley? Sure. But maybe it makes more sense to have a founder whose family and he had been in the tooling and die space and actually is doing in Detroit. And then maybe you layer in 3D printing and AI and some of the best technologies from maybe it's MIT people from the East Coast or Stanford or Cal people or just Silicon Valley people from the West Coast. But for a while, that concept was just completely foreign to people and they weren't comfortable getting on planes or maybe even not getting in cars and going up and down 280. And so we just saw this as a real opportunity. And I think as we're filming this in 2025, I think that's shifted a bit and that's exciting, but I still think it's too narrowly focused when people think about solving the big problems. And so we continue to be very macro. And so there's no category that is untouchable for us as we think about what a need to solve problem is.
How did you come up with the Midwest thesis? And what is that thesis for those who don't know?
Well, I always want to be careful with the geography piece of this because the way I think about it is geography is more, let's say, like the tail wagging the dog. We are not a Midwest focused fund in the sense that we're looking for companies because they happen to be in the Midwest. We are thesis driven investors focusing on ideas. And if that company happens to be in Mountain View or LA or somewhere else,
and that's the right place to do it.
That's the right place to do it.
Okay.
But the way we got comfortable investing in these more off the beaten path geographies was when JD and I were together on the West Coast, we did it. We looked at companies in Kansas City. We looked at companies in New Hampshire. That fund had more of a global mandate. We looked and invested in companies in Newcastle, not in London in the UK, or Marseille in France. And so we never subscribed to the view that you had to be in a tech hub to build a great business. And that was sort of when I first started getting into venture, that was just kind of the playbook. Well, if you're not here, you can't do it. It's not going to work. You can't scale. But in our experience, if you're building something really interesting and defensible and you're motivating prospective employees the right way, people are going to come to you. And I want to be very clear. This is not like a post-COVID, okay, well, you just hire everyone from SF or somewhere and they work remotely. I mean, if you're a founder and you want your team to be physically present, that is not a problem wherever you're building. Because if you're truly changing an industry or the world with what you're trying to do, that's going to motivate people and they will move and come to you. You don't have to go to them.
I was like seeing that as well. And I guess it was 4 years on, but 2023, I was seeing companies like Whisper Aero based out of Tennessee, and they, got a giant mansion and moved all their first 20 employees to that mansion. And they're like, okay, we're going to build out of, Tennessee. And they started expanding there. And, you have, again, Tennessee Brickyard VC, who's like, moves everyone to Tennessee, and they're like, okay, you're going to spend the next 3 months here, and this is great for focus. Is there a thing where, like, maybe it's even better because there are less distractions?
I think it's an interesting question. I think that there are all sorts of distractions in our lives right now that are challenging to navigate. And so I think if you can, in some way, if you can just get the noise out from your profession and have, it's like this weird way in which if you have fewer people that do what you do nearby, you can just, on one hand, maybe there's fewer people with whom you can riff on the specific idea, but it actually creates much quieter headspace so you can think more independently, which usually leads to bigger, better, bolder ideas, and then the downstream execution on those ideas. And so I tend to find, as someone who lives in like suburban Connecticut now, where sure there's some VCs here and there, but it's not really a tech ecosystem. There's plenty of financial people, but no one that really does a lot of venture. I'm on planes a lot, but for me it's a great base camp because when I'm out with my family, and no one does what I do. And so it's not like I'm in Palo Alto where you're bumping into 20 VCs and everyone's talking about it all the time. And so I think that idea of having some independence for more creative thought, keeping the noise out is a good thing. There's also I think the reality is if you're a founder building, you're going to have less issues of employees being poached if there aren't dozens and dozens of startups around the corner.
Right.
You roll up and down 101, you see all the billboards from SFO to going into the city. And it's when things are frothy, that's overwhelming and people are getting job offers all the time. And even if they don't have any intention to take them, there's big money getting thrown at them, given all the capital that's in the ecosystem. And that can be distracting.
That's an interesting point. For this new AI super cycle that we're in, a lot of people, at least on the Twitter timeline, are debating SF is the only place to be.
When I was talking before about building in a specific geography, those companies were doing something very unique in those geographies it made sense to be in those geographies. If you're just doing sort of horizontal, what I call horizontal AI, perhaps it's a little bit less interesting or unique. And so for me, like the companies we would get excited about, they probably wouldn't be in the Bay, but I understand why, if you're moving that quickly and the dollars are flowing that quickly and you're just doing pure sort of AI that's not vertically specific and maybe less of the application layer, more of the infrastructure, that's the place to be. But we've seen plenty of highly talented AI companies or AI companies using AI to go after the sectors they care about in mining, in coal, in biotech and other categories and financial services who are certainly not based in the Bay.
Talk a little bit about the Mithril journey and, how did you get into venture? What were you doing before that? Sure. And the incredible talent that's come out of there.
As I mentioned, I was a lawyer. I was practicing law, doing sort of corporate work, mergers and acquisitions, take privates, sort of all the typical business law you can do. Started working on, when I moved to the West Coast, with a lot of serial acquirers, Facebook, Google, Oracle, et cetera, and got more curious about the startup ecosystem. And right place, right time, happened to meet the Mithril team as they were launching the fund. And the gentleman who was running the fund, part of his strategy was he wanted people to build the venture fund, he wanted people who had not been in venture. Yeah. And that was kind of a unique approach. And so he was willing to take someone on the investment side who had been a lawyer, but who was curious and willing to work hard. And me and some friends had owned a restaurant, and I had dabbled in investing in technology, and I had done very complex structuring as a lawyer. So you put all those things together, it kind of created an interesting archetype of someone who could be an investor. But he took the bet, and there were a bunch of other people who were builders, who were in other professional careers, and we kind of all came together and have all gone on to do pretty good things. A couple of people are investors. One guy's co-founder of Vanderil. Guy's my former partner and our vice president. One guy's running the Linux Foundation. Right. And so it's been one woman is now working at DIU, Defense Innovation Unit. Oh, wow. So it was a very strong team and continues to be a strong team.
in that time, we were talking about this at lunch. Maybe for the audience, like, walk us through like what were the ingredients of such a high performing team? Even though like you have these younger associate level people, but they go on to do amazing things, and that's not the case for every organization, let alone venture firm. Not every startup produces
Right.
these cohorts of really successful people who are on this like really J-curve trajectory, or venture firms. That's not common.
Yeah, I think you need to empower your team to go
Right.
build amazing theses, basically. And so you need to give them the time to do the work. You need to give them some level of instruction, and you need to give them some true agency in what they're doing. Obviously, if someone's very young and has a good idea, you're not just going to hand over the checkbook.
Right.
But making sure they have a true presence in a meeting, making sure they have a voice, and sometimes throwing them into the fire in a meeting and as you're asking questions to an entrepreneur, it tends to be the more senior people that ask the questions, and then all of a sudden there's a lull. You turn to them and say, "Hey, well, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And if they're not prepared, one, that's an interesting indicator. But if they are, it just gives them more confidence to go forward and start sort of building their voice and asking their questions, because everyone has a different perspective of these things. And I might be great at sort of finding a founder's blind spots, and some other person, he or she may be great at thinking about the go-to-market or the tech piece or whatnot.
When you say you encourage them to become thesis-driven, investors or people, what's the approach to forming a thesis for them? What would be your guide to like a new associate that comes into your firm?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people say they want to go into venture just because it's sort of a sexy asset class. It's a
status symbol now, or sexy asset class.
It's a cool job,
right,
because you get to invest in the next X or SpaceX or whatever. Well, I think if you're in venture, all of a sudden you can be tweeting or whatever channel you want to use, and all of a sudden you get enough people to like you, and you start to feel very self-important. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why people want to go into venture for the wrong reasons, but that aren't the right reasons. But I think to empower the right people, and if you're someone who's getting into venture in the early days, it's like, well, be like truly honest with yourself. Why do you want to get into this asset class? Maybe you don't know and you're just learning, but once you're in, like, how do you get in the door? Like, it's ultimately like, how can you help a VC firm if it's not? There's all sorts of operational things you can do to help a VC, but if you're on the investment side, you can just help with the brute force of doing the diligence. But there's less like hard diligence that's done at the early stage. So that's a certain type of firm. But if you want to be truly, truly influential, you need to have a thesis about what the state of the world is today and how that's going to change over the next 5 to 7 years. And if you don't have a thesis, have questions around, well, I see this, but what if this? And what if, and sort of always be questioning the state of the world. And if you can do that, I think you can actually ask the right questions of the founders because you don't need to have the ideas yourself. If you have a thesis, that's great, but you need to tease out of the founders really understand why they're building the company they're building, why they are motivated to build this company. And when you can get into that psychology, you can sort of get that like true partner board level conversation. Yeah. You're going to get much more insight into sort of how they tick and what level of confidence you have in them. But it also allows you to show, like, if you can unsurface that or if it's unsurfaced, then you can actually like bring it to the top and a more senior investor in the meeting with you, it doesn't have to do that. That's a true value add.
We were walking here. We were talking about how looking at markets and the macro is also like a really important question you should ask yourself when you're making an investment. Do you have an anti-portfolio where you got it wrong, and like what were the insights there? What did that teach you in how you think about the markets?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's all sorts of versions of this. I think, I mean, we don't have like Narya is too new to have an anti-portfolio.
No, Narya, this throughout your career.
But I mean, I know some funds actually have an anti-portfolio on their, more, I guess it depends how you're defining. Are you, on your is your definition of an anti-portfolio the ones that we missed that did well, or the ones we invested in that did not do well?
The ones, we could go either. My definition was that the ones that you missed that did well, because I would assume that would inform your thesis better, like in the future.
Yeah, I guess in some, I'm sort of always learning from the okay ones, the wins, the misses, the ones you wish you had missed. But I think one thing that is important and informs how we look at anything is sort of why when we were talking about the stage in which we invest, I think I was pretty clear to say, but we might go later. So I think there's an element of you want to pay attention to valuation and you don't want to be valuation insensitive, but you don't want to be too valuation sensitive either, because a lot of these companies in these outcomes are pretty binary. So if there was sort of a pattern over the past 12 years or so where I think if there's like one thing I could change, it would be not rely, be even more thoughtful about whether something what does it mean for something to be too late? Is it too late because the upside's not there? Then that's an easy answer. Then you move on. But if it's too late because it doesn't fit into a neat box into the narrative you're telling at your fund, maybe you're not being opportunistic enough and need to change how you articulate what you're focused on. Because if we think about like big problems, these companies can be $1 trillion companies at scale. Yeah. So yes, there's like an ownership issue but maybe the dilution issue goes down quite a bit as you get pretty late. So owning 1% or less than 1% or less than 5%, depending on the math, for funds of our size, that are under $150 million per vehicle, those move the needle quite a bit. Right. So when is it too late to invest in SpaceX or Anduril or Stripe? I don't know. Yeah. But it's sort of an interesting question. But that's probably the biggest. There've been a bunch of companies like that where we had the allocation, some of the biggest companies in the world right now, and could have put either first check in or more capital in, and we didn't because we thought it was too expensive. But I think we didn't think long term enough, and which has been a good lesson to learn, because at Narya we're very careful to avoid that mistake.
What is long term? Is it like 10 years? You mentioned in venture it's 10 years is a long time, but is it like 15 years? Like for an early stage
I think
fund,
if you're talking about, I think if you're talking about liquidity, you've got to think 10 years plus. Right. When I say, well, we want to invest, we have sort of this general bias, as I mentioned before, against like, IT and consumer internet. Doesn't mean we won't invest in those categories if the companies are special. Right. And there's like this sort of historic way in which investors still behave, because the senior people made a lot of money in SaaS, and so then all the junior people do SaaS, or they do more there's another accounting software company, or there's another consumer app or whatnot. Right. And so there's that's like the rear view mirror stuff. But then there's this other world of like people that really want to solve for the future, and it's glass half full, and it's like really optimistic. And that's, but there's like the T, the time component of it. It's really hard to sort of ascertain when these companies are going to get traction. So it's T plus ? And that stuff is like really, could be really fun to look at. But I think for us, it's a distraction, right? Because it may or may not be venture investable because
Right.
you just like mining aquifers on the moon or even nuclear fusion, like the
Right.
$1 going into fusion right now
Yeah.
are,
15.
I think, you're getting closer, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what if I'm being honest, I don't T plus, is it T plus 10? Is it T plus 20? Is it T plus 30?
It looks like 20.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. Like, so T plus 20. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2045.
Yeah, I had Brandon Sorbam on the podcast. He's
Yep.
co-founded Commonwealth Fusion Systems.
Yep.
And yeah, looks like
But-
we're at least 10, 15 years away from like a product.
But
Yeah,
so,
the market,
so the
yeah.
way the market has evolved from when JD and I first sort of ideated on this thesis and then started our fund is now at least you have more funds thinking about the future.
Right.
But what I would argue is a large amount of those funds that are thinking about the future are thinking about the distant future, not the sort of actionable in a realistic time frame future. So when I say 10 years to actually
Right.
go back and answer your question, it's, can you get real traction and can you be on a path to
Right.
say market saturation or showing that you could be a durable franchise within 10 years.
Hmm.
And that's, that's a good amount of time to go be able to build. But if you're truly doing something that's not, a flash in the pan or whatnot, that's how long these businesses take. Look at Palantir. Look
Yeah,
at-
it sometimes does take 15, 20
and
years.
so we're comfortable with that.
Right.
I mean, our fund is structured as a traditional fund, but that's
Right.
sort of the idea. And of course,
Yeah.
and that's, and we only want to invest in companies where we think they can operate ad infinitum as a going concern. So if there's not a story about how they could IPO and be independent, and for as long as they are to continue to be relevant in the market, then that's not something we want to focus on. That does not mean they will not get acquired. And M&A is certainly a possibility. And so if you start factoring M&A and you're working on that 10-year time frame, that starts happening in years 3 to 7.
Right. So is the 10-year timeline, does that come from, just how venture funds are structured? You need some liquidation events in that time frame, and that's the business of venture capital. You raise a fund because you want to build it for a good return for your investors, right? Is that where that thinking is coming from, or is it? Yeah. I'll let you
Look,
answer
I think
that, yeah.
I think if in a perfect world you'd have an evergreen structure,
Right.
but when you are starting out as a new brand, our LPs are amazing and like very, very loyal and support us with kind of any kind of investments we make. But I think asking to sort of lock up capital indefinitely when you're an emerging manager, even though I've been doing this for some time at other funds, I think that was not something I wanted to go to market with because it just felt, I don't like doing things just because they're, quote unquote market, but
Right.
I just felt like given where the LP ecosystem was, that was the wrong way to start Narya.
In the next, while we're on that, in the next 10-year time frame, 2025 to 2035, what are some theses you have where you haven't found a company yet where you'd like to meet a builder? A future builder could be watching this, so
Yeah. Because we're looking a little bit, I sort of feel like the most contrarian thing to do now is like actually to invest in companies that can solve the problems now. Because it's sort of like there's all these hidden in plain sight opportunities, like in healthcare, for
Interesting.
example. And so,
say more. What do you mean by that?
well, it's, everyone's chasing, whether it's energy or defense, or even a lot of the advanced manufacturing ideas that they're still. A lot of those aren't the T plus question mark that we were talking about. They're not too futuristic. They're investable, and we invest in these categories. But there's just a lot of firms now really focused on those industries, and yet there's like take healthcare for example. There's just all these inefficiencies in the healthcare system. Hospital systems are completely messed up in how they even figure out how they do supply procurement to how they manage how many hours physicians are working, to how they start moving to a value-based care model and how they can monetize that the right way. And it's just kind of a mess. And for us, like healthcare is a good example of a completely non-sexy category where there's certainly hundreds of billions of dollars available. And that's just doing it, privately. There's also, with all the Maha and Doge initiatives, there's probably a lot that startups could be doing with the government as well. And so that's something that I'm very interested in. Is that 10 years in 2035? I don't know. I think on the energy side, though, I think we need to be spending. I think there's novel ideas out there, and this is why I'm an investor, not a builder. I don't have the specific idea, but there's novel ideas out there around fission. The sort of playbook right now seems to be, okay, well, we're just going to do all these small modular reactors.
Yeah.
Right. We're not reinventing the playbook. These existed before, and we're just going to do them a little. We're going to size them down a little bit to have these specific use cases. And they're getting pulled into data centers and some other categories, given the energy needs with the AI boom. But I do think there's probably a different way to harness fission, in a more unique business model, a more unique tech stack. And I'm looking for that because the pattern recognition is that it was abandoned for a long time, and now people are coming back and they're just telling the story. Oh, we just have to do the same thing and it was all geopolitical and regulatory, and that's why it didn't work. But then everyone's kind of leapfrogged it and it's all going to fusion. But those companies all seem very interesting, but a little too far out. And I think maybe it's someone from fusion, maybe it's someone from geothermal. I don't know where someone's going to get the aha moment, but there's going to be a way to unlock fission in a complete differentiated with a completely differentiated business model that isn't just going to solve how you get through the NRC and then start scaling and the NIMBY issues and all these things that the nuclear companies have, but it's just going to be totally innovative. And I'm starting to see interesting things with just AI around just even dealing with nuclear, with regulations tied to nuclear, and there's just more people coming to the space. I think there's going to be something new there, and it's not going to be it's not going to be. It might, fusion at some point, but it's not going to be fusion. It's going to be something sleepy like fission, but it's going to be completely different. So that's interesting to me. On the energy space too, I think geothermal is pretty interesting. Obviously, if you can unlock the heat there, that's extremely powerful. I'm pretty bearish on wind and solar. I think there's going to be some unlock over the next 10 years in dirty energy as well, making traditional fossil fuels just stronger and more efficient. So we're spending a lot of time in energy, but very, very cautious. Health, like I said, healthcare is a massive one. I think advanced manufacturing, just to go back there for a second, is really interesting. And as you mentioned, my partner Falon was one of the co-founders of Reindustrialize. It's been a tremendous event that just had its second conference in the summer in Detroit, and we actually did our annual meeting right before it there. So it was really fun, and the quality of folks that are building and are showing up, it's pretty impressive. I think the trick with venture and advanced manufacturing, though, is that with some of these businesses where you're marrying atoms and bits, there's a margin question, there's a capital intensity question, and so I think as much as we want to invest in all these pure industrial companies, I think there's going to be some new models for
financing them?
Well, certainly for financing. I mean, we know some companies doing that. Yeah. Where you sort of have a different level of capital stack to the, but to that point, I think a lot of these companies aren't necessarily venture backable. Yeah. And what's happened is because everyone is so, as venture investors, we're glass half full. Yeah. We're like, okay, yes, we're going to start onshoring. Everything that Reindustrialize stands for, we want to do it. Everyone legitimately wants to do it. You want to build it. You want to invest in it. But what people are going to see is that a lot of these businesses just don't have the right kind of ability to scale like a venture company. And so the venture dollars should be going to a subset of these companies, not to all of them. Same thing in defense. Yeah. And so my concern is that we're having this moment where there's administration willing to support these initiatives at a federal and state level. and then you've got really good builders, but we're building too many companies, and some of them are the wrong kind, and so you're sort of just kind of you're spreading out both the dollar, the capital going into the system, as well as sort of builder talent, and sometimes that can lead to pretty negative consequences. So hopefully, the right dollars go to a subset of these companies that can really move fast and scale. And then, but what could happen, on a more positive note, what could happen from that is, I think there's going to be new sort of orchestration layers and things on the software side that can help too. And you might, and so I tend to be bullish on the category from like a CAGR standpoint,
right?
But super cautious on what's investable. We've invested in one company in the advanced manufacturing space over the past 6 years, and we look at a lot of them.
What would be some financing models for majority of these businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's traditionally what happens is you get venture dollars, and at some point you have all these physical assets, and so you can start using that as collateral and start raising debt, and whether that's like mezzanine financing or just pure credit. There's just lower cost of capital you can access, but like the true mezz funds want to go way downstream, and they want to deploy billions of dollars, and the credit funds tend to do more like they tend to do less with collateral, and they tend to focus more on revenues and things. And so some of them are a little more innovative than others, but there's sort of a gap there for something like almost like a mini mezz business model. And I know a few companies that are working on that. Again, it's a financial arm, so probably not really investable for Narya. But,
yeah, of course.
But
yeah,
I get much more comfortable. But if that exists and that's a credible downstream financer, I get much more comfortable in sort of the capital intensity of these businesses.
Right.
Because whether it's space tech, whether it's defense, whether it's advanced manufacturing, these bits and atoms businesses, it's like, well, yes, like a subset of them, the 1% can raise billions of dollars from just from venture, then growth equity, then crossover. But as more and more of these companies permeate the ecosystem, that's going to be much harder.
Yeah. Much less so, but do you think like compared to like maybe we're in 2025 right now, 3 years ago, when you started with this thesis where I guess you described the thesis as technologies that need to exist or need problems that need to get solved, right? And some of them are through critical technologies, right? And others could be in different ways. And maybe some of these were in these categories: advanced manufacturing, energy infrastructure, maybe space tech, right? So maybe 2019 to 2023, when the first 4 years of the firm, you probably tell me, but like I might be wrong. There were not as many funds doing it. As a consequence, maybe not as many builders inspired to build in these categories because there's not enough of them. But since 2023, there's been some cultural shift, and there are more funds who are deploying. There are probably, as you mentioned, then more builders start permeating the ecosystem, and then you have to reevaluate, how you make investments in these categories. Is that what's happened?
Well, I think so. Given if you've read Peter's book 0 to 1, a lot of that's our playbook, and I think a lot of VCs try to think about that book and use a lot in there. It's a great read. But I think this idea of are we building for can we build a true monopoly is the most important question that we ask. Care less about the time period, like whether does it take 5 years, take 20 years. But we have to be able to quantify the time period, unlike like some of the other categories I mentioned. But so if that's like your focus, you can't get to that conclusion investing in 6 companies in a 5-year period in the same category. Or it's much harder to get to that conclusion. Maybe they're all like slightly different, but I think the way we think, and if you're going after these really big ideas, we think of sort of there's one or two in a category every 10-year period, and those are the ones you need to find. And so when I see any funds go too deep into one category and that's all they do, my question is always like, well, what's their cost of capital? And they might have a very different cost of capital and return profile with their LPs, and that's fine. And so, in some ways, I kind of love having these sector experts because we're more generalist, and they can complement us really nicely in a boardroom or on a cap table. And so it's good for the ecosystem. But I do think what I think has actually happened in some of these categories, it's less about. It's true. There's more founders out there, and there's more capital going into these categories. So there's certainly less contrarian ideas than they were when we first launched the fund, which is why we have moved on mostly from these categories. But these things tend to happen when a couple new companies get to a critical mass and start spawning. People start leaving and they start spawning their own startups.
Right.
And I think, whether it's Palantir, whether it's Anduril, these sort of companies that have been very successful with, dual use, and going after verticals that were traditionally untouchable unless you were just like a prime or something, it's just given people a lot of aha moments of, oh, maybe I can do this too. I would argue that if your aha moment is from a company already developing a monopoly in that category, you should get a different moment. You should find a different aha moment. But that always happens in any category. It happened, blockchain, it happened crypto.
And that is when you stop thinking about that category because the board is still.
I never stopped thinking about it, and we get plenty of FOMO and seeing all the companies raising hundreds of millions of dollars. But we want to stay nimble and curious. It's why we only do a couple deals a year. It's why we have one defense company in the Narya portfolio. We have one advanced manufacturing. And it's why we ended up doing something in religion. It was not a thesis we had, but there was a moment in time. We had a really strong thesis during COVID about people feeling disconnected to their faith, assuming faith was important to them. And what does that mean to be part of a congregation when you can't be physically present? And we went on this kind of journey to look at a bunch of companies and found this amazing one called Hallow that's doing really well. And that is a consumer internet business, right? It's an app. And in our PPM when we launched Fund 1, I was very clear we're pretty bearish on those. But it does not mean we'll not invest if we find a very special company. And this thesis around religion came up based on a very unusual moment in time. And the question then became, well, are we interested in this thesis just because of COVID, or will this endure post-COVID? And we had a lot of debates around it, but we ultimately thought it would endure. And I was just, I just saw on the news the other day that there's, younger men are turning to faith more than ever before or something. And I haven't done a lot of work on who was saying that and what the backup is, but based on how Hallow is doing and how people want to connect, whether it's to Christianity or any other organized religion or just the idea of spirituality and meditation, it's kind of taken on a new life over the past 5 years. And so I think we were pretty prescient in that thesis. We did the same thing in, let's say, post ESG asset management. We did the same thing in free speech. And so if we were just saying, okay, well, we're doing reindustrializing the United States, and that's all we're doing, we would have missed out on these great ideas.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that thesis on religion sort of gets validated in this other sense that I was at Angel Studios a couple of weeks ago, and their thesis was doing faith-based film and media. That's how they started, and now it's more values-based. And given that their community members have gone from nothing to 1 million in 2 years, and then 1.5 million in the last 3 months, there's something probably going on here. Yeah, you're probably right. Super fascinating. And so you mentioned FOMO. Is that a feature of venture?
I think
You clearly seem to not react to it because you still take your time to debate and think and, make those 3 or 4 bets that count.
I guess I don't. Well, we have a very concentrated portfolio.
Right.
And so one of the things that's very important to me is that we are only investing if we have like deep conviction on a thesis and a founding team and a company. And because of that, I think most funds our size would invest in, 25 to 40 companies per vehicle. We're investing in like 12. And then when you factor the doubling and tripling down into our best companies, it's like 3 to 4 bets per fund.
Right.
So super concentrated and very intentional in that strategy.
And very uncommon.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I can riff on this for a while, but I think the tied to the FOMO piece, if we're doing our jobs, we will have FOMO because there's going to be more than 12 to 15 really good companies per cycle. And so what I of course I think about it. You read headlines, oh, this company is just killing it.
That you could have been a first check-in or second check-in, whatever. Yeah.
But what I think more about it is worrying about like, regret after having written a check. And I think that happens when you move too quickly and you don't do enough diligence. You don't take your time and you react because the founder tells you, I have 4 term sheets and you've got a week.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
Or 2 days.
Yeah. Whatever it is, right? It's bonkers.
Yeah.
And people can invest that way. That's fine. If a founder wants to run a process, it's not even a process in my mind, but run an auction that way, go for it.
Yeah.
But I just think that we just say no thanks if that's the case, because that's just not the right way we want to partner with people.
So it's like a filtering process, like self-selection in many ways.
It's look, I think there's a lot of capital out there right now. I would argue most of it is not strategic risk capital. And by that, I mean capital that can truly be, value add post check writing. And also capital that's not, or value add that's not just like, oh, well, here are my friends at this growth fund and they can do your next round. I mean, obviously that's important to keep funding the company, but I think there's other things that really strong investors can help with. In particular, business model innovation and strategy, and then founder blind spots are the two ones that I think are the most important. And then of versus like rolling up your sleeves and helping a founding team like with their financial model or a deck. Like hopefully our founders are able to are doing unique enough things where they can hire people to do that, and they have their business people as well as sort of IP innovators, and so they don't need us to do that heavy lift. And we're not structured that way. We intentionally don't have a massive team. And so
as a lean team, how do you think about like being a strategic, well, as you define, value add investor to both their business model and what do you mean by like helping them with their blind spots?
Yeah, so I think I
have not heard another investor describing strategic value add this way, which is why I'm like, love to dive in.
Well, I think there's certainly a scale question. We're on our second fund right now. And how much time can you spend as you go into funds 3, 4, and 5? That's a fair point. And we think we're coming up with solutions to that. But candidly, we're a startup ourselves. It's something we're still working on. And it's not quite ripe yet. But I do think that we can spend quality time with a lot of companies, partly because we have a really strong network of strategic LPs that are experts in a lot of the whether they're individuals or institutions.
Right.
They are leading experts in the categories we care about. So we sort of have this bench of hundreds, if not thousands, that will help our companies.
Yeah.
That's very proprietary to Narya. So that helps with scale and stuff. As far as the founder blind spots go, I think we all have like our weaknesses, and we all have tendencies to be too optimistic, to be too pessimistic, to do too much ourselves, to not do enough, to see a market in a way that is a little bit too naive, or just things sometimes can be too easy. I guess that goes back to too optimistic point, but like, I guess that what I really mean by that is we have this pattern recognition over a decade investing across sectors, gene therapy to free speech to religion to space defense. Those are all very different business models. Yep. Those are all very different archetypes of founders. Those are all very different go-to-markets. Those are all very different companies as to what internal KPIs you should have to even think about progress.
Yeah.
And the more of those you see, the more you can say, look, here's what I think you're missing as you thinking about building this. And it may be an HR thing. You're not hiring enough people. You're doing too much. It may be a go-to-market thing. You're selling it this way, but this is the wrong way to do it. And it's always a discussion. We're not, we're partners. We're not investors that are telling you what to do. But I think that's really important, and that also helps with business model innovation. Like if you're doing something that's truly unique, it doesn't have to be IP, but if you're doing something that's truly unique, you should be able to create a business model that allows you to move faster and deeper with if it's commercially with your customers, so that you are on a path to market saturation much faster than anyone else, and then that keeps the competition at bay and puts you on your path to creating a healthy monopoly.
Do you think most unique ideas don't end up getting the right unique business model to support it?
My guess is there's probably some sort of inverse correlation. Like a really unique idea typically has like a very conventional like business model or something, whereas you should be thinking much more creatively. Because if what you're doing is so unique, you don't have to do anything by the book. There's no such thing as market, because you are creating a new market.
Right.
So if you are the best in class at what you're doing, and it's that valuable to your customers, they're going to pay you for it. And you want to get paid. And this isn't too novel of an example. You want to get paid up front, they're going to pay you for it. You want a 5-year contract, not a 1-year contract, that's going to happen. It might take a moment to sort of nail the go-to-market, to sort of make sure the narrative's right, so you're highlighting exactly why this value add is, why you're so unique, why that's going to endure all these things. But that's just a story.
Right.
And it's a story you believe, so it's easy to tell a story you believe. And then it's also a story that's true. So if you believe it and it's actually true, then it's an easy story to tell. Doesn't mean then you got to figure out who the early adopters are and all that stuff. But I mean, one example is there was a biotech company, and what do VCs and biotechs do? Well, you give the company capital, they go through all their preclinical, and then they either do a joint development agreement with a big pharma company, or they get acquired by big pharma, and you kind of piece out before you know if anything works or not. So you can be a hero as a VC, even if the drug never works. Make billions of dollars for your investors, but which we can debate if that's success or not, right? It's like this interesting question, like, okay, well, we made a lot of money, but the drug didn't work.
Success for the fund, but is it like a outcome for
should you feel good about that? Should you not? Does it not matter? Am I overthinking it? But let's say you that's not, we actually had to talk about this at our annual meeting with our biotech founders. Like, you're building for the, let's just call it like the bias. You're building for the right reason. You're not building a biotech for financial engineering. You're building a biotech to create a transformational long-term platform business that's going to have lots of drugs and be like a Regeneron or Genentech or something, not just a 1 or 2 asset company that's acquired, which is still hugely successful, because that could still be a $10 billion exit. I mean, a truly transformational biotech platform. What you might think about doing, an idea we brought to an old company, is like, I don't know, you might stay private longer, because you're not dealing with the quarterly, pressures and of a fickle investor class, public investor class, or shorts, or all the funds that are shorting you and wanting you to fail, which is always frustrating if you're trying to build an important business. So you might do that. if your IP is truly unique, maybe the other thing you might think about doing is
licensing.
You could do that.
Yeah.
Maybe if your customers are using your product over and over again, maybe you give them the whole platform and put it in-house. You got to figure out the right legal relationship so that it's not, you're comfortable with how the IP is handled, but you can sort of change your NPV of any deal by an order of magnitude. Maybe a royalty tail. Maybe you deserve a royalty tail. If your IP is so transformational, and a drug company is using it to do something that they can't do without you, when they go to market, you should get some of their revenue. Versus just like, oh yeah, let's just sell this thing to pick your big pharma and move on. No, let's build, and it has to come from the motivation of the founders. They want to, they need to want to be able to, they have to want to be able to stay and build this thing, and their employees have to be aligned too. But assuming that's like the energy you're getting from them, there's a lot of stuff you can do on the business model side.
Fascinating. What do you think, in all your time, investing and having built this concentration strategy focused on, I guess you asked yourself the question, can this company be a monopoly? Right? Can this business become a monopoly? What are those ingredients of a monopoly? Now looking back, hindsight, what have you learned?
Well, I guess the really unhelpful answer for probably your audience is that it depends, right? I've learned that there's not one answer. It's
because you mentioned the founder archetype also looks different,
Yeah.
Everything about the market also looks different, but you're still trying to answer that one question in your brain, right?
Right. And so let me just give you a few. It can be engendering trust with your customers. It can be true trust. It can be actual network effects where, which everyone's talked about. It can be truly defensible IP that lasts for say 5+ years. At some point it won't be defensible, but there's something just no one else can do. And when I say IP, I don't mean IP that you have all the patents and all that stuff.
Yeah,
you can have the patents or not,
it.
but I just mean no one else can build it.
Right.
You have a unique skill of building the specific thing.
Yeah.
And the other is like just growing it so fast, you get ahead of everyone. And part of that is not just how fast you grow, but it's make sure you get paid for it. And so those are sort of kind of all the ingredients. Maybe another one actually is you have an unfair advantage in access to the market. And that's the archetype of that founder is someone who's been in the industry for a long time and is now spinning out from an incumbent or the government and basically wrote the playbook for what that incumbent or the government wanted and is now building it. We have a company in the space doing those ex-Space Force people, and they're now building basically what the Space Force wanted. And so they have a head start as to building the right business there. And they understand how to navigate.
Which is a form of a network effect. Yeah.
I mean, sure. It's a, and so I think there's, but when we're looking the archetype of an actual, it's got to be, the founder needs to have a real strong theory of the case as to how this becomes a real transformative business. It can't just be, well, the market's massive, and we're gonna go get a piece of it. That's a weak answer.
You need to have a plan. So I'm guessing that's what you're referring to, right? How do these founders typically communicate that plan? Do you believe in master plans from founders? Is it a great way to see how they think long term?
Those can be effective. I mean, I think what I'm not interested in is flipping through a deck. I'm not interested in seeing your TAM slide.
Right. Yeah.
I don't care about.
Course,
if the TAM is so well, if it's too low, then I think that would be pretty intuitive. But if it's not intuitive to me that the TAM is large enough where I should be thinking about investing in it, like, then I don't know. Then I'm probably wasting my time. Like like almost any market in theory is big enough, like to create a really big business. It's just a question of what your micro market is you're going after first. How do you scale, and why do you think you can do that? Yeah. And the only time where and TAM's the wrong way to phrase it, because I think that's just, when you see that slide, you're like, okay, they read, like, they went to some course or they read some or something about what VCs want, or whenever I hear that advice, it's all bogus, I think, because each VC is so different, and not only like are they different as individuals or firms, but depends on when you catch them too. They might ask different questions on a different day, and so you just have to be flexible, I think. So I think decks are fine, but it's more about what is that genesis story? What is the true kind of inspiration for why you want to keep doing this? What is the what's creating the foundation that gives you the confidence that you were like destined to do this?
Yeah.
And how crazy how crazy are you in these beliefs? And like, I mean, there's like kind of like too crazy. You don't want to be too crazy, but there's like a good kind of crazy where it's like, you'll hear the right criticism, but the noisy criticism that is kind of not real and just intending to knock you down. You don't hear that because you're so confident in what you're going to do.
Right.
And there's a distinction between like confident founders and just like loud founders that are like kind of shouting at you and getting really hyped up about what they're doing. And that's like as an investor, that's a really important read, because I tend to find the more animated people get, the less they know what they're talking about.
That's a really good phrasing of, I guess, what this kind of founder looks like. Yeah. Super interesting. So to wrap, like, maybe what would be your summary of like what this monopoly, how these monopolies shape up? Is it like, from what I'm getting from this is like these founders usually understand why they're destined in some cases, or have like some sort of self-confidence there. When we talk about the team, I think just to go one at a time. I think their mission, like almost all of our founders are mission driven. Right. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean like that you can be mission driven and never have been on that mission before. And you're like, and we have a company in the Medicare space where it's Palantir people taking a big data approach to solving an issue that really, it's healthcare, but it really relates to data having been traditionally like super opaque. And so it's actually not a Medicare issue, it's a data issue. And that's like, and their mission was like, they saw their parents struggle through finding a right Medicare plan for them at a time where they felt kind of vulnerable getting a little bit older. That's very powerful.
Yeah.
It could be that they felt like destined to do this, like the Hallow team. And that's, and they genuinely believe that, and we push them on that. And that's like incredibly motivated, or motivating. Or it could be that they really wanted to do this within the government or at an incumbent, and they couldn't. There's too much red tape or whatever. That's like all those archetypes are just like, or they had a different business. These are all examples of our portfolio. They had a different business, but then like macro tailwinds created a potential to turn the business into something else, and they felt ideologically aligned with where that was going, and just felt more inspired to build this business than ever before.
What's an example of a master plan where somebody was able to really nail how they're going to go after the market? Like, okay, this is the piece of the market we're going to go after first. And from memory, like, what was the best, like, I guess, example of that you heard, maybe in recent times?
I think I mean, I won't get too specific,
right?
But the best master plans tend to be ones in which there's a large market that they're ultimately going to go after. They are very intentional about not going after that whole market at the beginning. It's a subset of the market. And everyone can read all these different books, including 0 to 1, about like why that's a good thing to do.
Right.
Why stay super focused, create a monopoly here and then expand. But it's hard to execute that because you could sell to a large customer, you could sell to a medium-sized customer, you could sell to a small customer. And not only is maybe the value of each of those deals different, and so the ROI is different based on how much time it takes. Those customers might all want slightly different things with your product, and so there's a time maybe to layer those all in. But so the best master plans would be to say, I'm gonna grab all 3 of those segments. Say it's large, medium, and small, but I am only starting out with subset X of, say, large, and here's why. And they already have thought this out so carefully that it's so structured that it just resonates.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work, it's so structured that you can get through that really quickly.
Yeah.
Versus if you go after, forget large, medium, and small. Let's say you just go after all the subsets of large. You don't really know what you're doing, and to sort of diagnose where the problem is takes much longer. And then all of a sudden you burn more capital and you don't have time to pivot.
Oh, so the iterations are much easier when you're going after a subset and you're focused.
Yeah, the iterations are easier, but it's also, I mean, that could mean if you're right, you can move faster, and if you're wrong, you can pivot. But it's also from a diligence standpoint and just a instilling confidence standpoint, it's just so much more. It's so much more detailed that you're seeing not just the founder's vision and dreams and getting excited to the founder that's shouting at you about what the world could look like. That's always exciting. I'd love to solve our energy problem. I'd love to, create sustainable net positive fusion. Who wouldn't? But I want to understand sort of that you are the person, or this is the team that you've been thinking of this for a long time. And now we're going to help you with our capital and whatever else, and all the strategic stuff we can do. But you're so far ahead of us on this. This is deeply mission driven, and you go from this journey, this iteration from concept to technology to product to business to scalable business, that it's threading through all those items. It's all connected, and you can rewind it and move things around, but it's the playbook is there, and it's just so precise and so macro and micro that it's okay, this isn't just a builder with an idea. This is just a founder. This is a leader, and this is a CEO or an executive team that's very rare. But if you're only doing 1 to 2 deals a year, you can wait for those founders.
That's a fair point. Well, I've heard you talk about the importance of mentorship previously. Who are some best mentors in your career that you've had, and what have you learned from them? And then maybe a couple of mentees that you're really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good mentor is someone who one is just willing to spend the time, and I have a whole range of them. I mean, back when I was a lawyer, it was someone that really threw me into the fire in meetings with clients and was sort of encouraging me to step up and ask the right questions and take the lead. And it was not something any other partner had ever done before. And so the first time was pretty rough because I was unprepared, but, she really pushed me, and it made me a much more productive lawyer, which then made me realize that I didn't want to be a lawyer. And so kind of there's like all these like little things that people do that help set your own level of confidence. And so she was pretty instrumental in that. I think, working with someone like Peter, who's just such a brilliant macro mind, and always thinking not just about today, but about the future, and has like this incredible pattern recognition of all the amazing companies he's built, ideologies he's worked on, and investments he's made. It's just sort of invaluable to have him involved. I think a lot of our other investors are leaders in their respective industries, and we don't have a lot of like traditional, like large pension funds so a lot of our investors are the principals are people that can really impart wisdom on us, and that's like really important. And so there's probably a dozen of them that I can tap into, and so it's always a little bit. I think it's good to have mentors who will challenge you. Yeah, it's good to have mentors who will give you real feedback, who actually will call you out, and not just say, tell you all the things you're doing well. In some ways, at this point, I didn't love this when I was younger, but like you almost don't want to waste time with that. You just want just assume that there's some things they like about you, but hey, here's what I think you're doing wrong, or here's what I think you're missing, or have you thought about this? And that's what we try to, like, when we're and talk about lessons learned. That's what I try to do when we're doing diligence. I'll say to a founding team, like, we might need to do a little bit of work first, but it's like, look, let's not spend time high-fiving around all the things we agree on. We can do that later. Yeah. Whether we invest or not, we want you to succeed, so we can do that later. Yeah. Here are the 3 items on which either we need to step up our knowledge, or we need to we're skeptical and we don't believe you, or you need to help us get there. And then we collaborate with them on our diligence, and then it just becomes a true partnership. And then it leads to, if you can get to the right answers, then of course you want to work with these people. Yeah. And so I try to do the same thing with mentor and mentees. And, and so it's been, and we don't, at Narya, we don't have sort of junior people by design, given as much as we're not investing in like generalist AI companies. Yeah. So we worry about long-term commoditization. There's all sorts of tools we can use to leverage our time and efforts. And I think, we tend, right now, the hiring at junior level is not a priority for us. But I think sort of at prior funds, when I was working with people who were more junior, it was always about empowering them to go, come up with their own ideas. Right. And I mean, there's all sorts of interesting companies that when JD and I were working together, that, before we started this together, that when he was first getting into venture, that we'd look at. And I think one of the reasons he found those great companies was because he was given time and encouragement to go think independently, versus like, hey, here are the 6 companies I want you to look at, and you're going to write this report. And I think, one of the best things for me was having been, having practiced in law, where that was it's just so structured. And other than that partner, like doing something that was unstructured and letting me have a voice in a meeting, which dramatically improved my learning curve. It's just kind of so formulaic, and you almost like give up. Like, why should I have any thoughts here? Or I'm not supposed to have any thoughts till I've been doing this for 8 years. Yeah. And then if that's how you've been thinking for 8 years, then by the time you're ready, you don't really have any thoughts anyway. And so that just doesn't work in venture, because it's all about, we like to say, like, venture is ultimately about wisdom and access. And so there's different ways to get access. Yeah. And these things can like feed off each other. But I think with wisdom, you really got to optimize the signal to noise ratio. So you can't just be doing like 6 pitches a day just because someone reached out with a pitch deck. You got to be much more thoughtful about what you want to do. Spend your time wisely. Like have a lot of, quiet thought around how do you actually think about the world? Like, what do you agree with or not agree with? Like, what do everyone, like, here's an example. Like everyone, I feel like everyone forget the government, everyone in the tech world talks about like the Taiwan issue. Like it's inevitable that we need to protect Taiwan physically. I don't know if that's true. What if it isn't? Like, what if, do we want to be investing in all these defense companies if it's not? What if we build stronger chips domestically? Do we?
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not making a statement about Taiwan or not, but I'm just saying like.
Oh no, I get it. Like asking a critical question about like something that's become groupthink, and
everyone just says just says the same thing, and then you hear it all in these pitches, and so I think everyone just needs to slow down.
Yeah.
And so that's not really directly answering the question, but on the mentor mentee stuff, that's I want mentors who can help me slow down, help me think really, really critically, make sure I'm investing not just in companies where I won't have whatever the opposite of FOMO is like 2 months in, which I think we've done a good job about so far. Doesn't mean we'll be right, but it just means our diligence and our thoughts were tight when we made the investment. The world can always change.
Yeah.
But and then also sort of give us the time to sort of think critically and challenge basic assumptions. And then I think with mentees it's the same. And as a team, like the reason Falon, JD, and I got to the thesis on Hallow was because we were not talking about, it's not like we woke up one day and said, oh, we should invest in a company focused on faith.
Yeah.
And let's go, I know we don't do consumer, but let's go do a consumer faith-based company. What we said was, all right, well, what are some ideas, like what are some categories where no one's investing that should actually be 100% investable by this asset class? And maybe they're like kind of weird and hidden in plain sight, or they're like disfavored for some reason. And like religion's a great example. Like what's more, I think we're past this now, but like what's more taboo than investing in religion companies at VC? Like what if your investors are different religions? Like we're not making a statement on what religion you need to be. We're just investing in this amazing business that is bringing this content to a massive market that wants it.
Yeah.
And it's become a huge business. And so like, if we were just laser focused on, okay, well, we're the defense fund or we're this, we never would have got there. Same thing in free speech.
That's fair. Yeah.
And free speech also being comfortable. When we invested, that was like a politically toxic area to invest in. Like free speech was seen as like a right of center issue. Yeah. And to be fair, we looked at a lot of companies that seemed to be politically motivated, but the one we invested in, Rumble, was not. And our thesis was like, this isn't a right-wing YouTube. This is just a platform holding line on free speech. And I don't know, I at the time didn't know if it was a year or 2 years or 5 years, but at some point this issue will no longer be politicized, and most Americans are going to want a free speech platform because this is a true foundation of what it means to be part of a democracy. Right. And like as we were talking, someone shouting something crazy or something you don't want to hear in Times Square, you don't ask them to be removed. You just walk away. Yeah. And so the fact that the tech incumbents were removing people just seemed undemocratic. And we had no issue in investing in anything that would further polarize our country. We saw it actually as the opposite. Right. So that the media said, "Oh, that's a MAGA YouTube." It's not. And if you go look at what they're doing today, political content is a very small piece of what they do. But we kind of loved that moment in time because we had this thesis that I would argue was pretty prescient. Yeah. And no other VC would not that they ever saw this company, but they wouldn't have touched it. And then once we did it, and whenever they saw they're going public, all the VCs you'd know reached out and said, "Hey, can we get in that?"
Yeah.
And you know, we rely on larger VCs coming after us, given our fund size. But
of course.
But it's not being afraid to develop that thesis for whatever reasons you have that are that you're comfortable with.
Was this pre Elon taking over X?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so this was, I mean, when we made when we had the thesis, this was I mean, Twitter was going that way too. Like this was the only game in town. And so one of the tricks with being right, or one of the dangers of being right, if you don't move fast enough, there's not a ton of defensible IP, is that people can move with you, and you get credit for being the leader, but you might not get the economic upside.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did in Strive Asset Management, this company we started with Vivek Ramaswamy, I'm on the board of, for the first check-in, sort of this thesis on, everyone said, "Oh, you're that anti-ESG or the MAGA BlackRock." The thesis was that there was a large enough population of retail and institutional investors that did not want their shares voted based on sort of based on some extracurricular activity. It was this idea that the best companies are going to have the best returns if they stay focused on what their core business is, and keep all, like everyone said that, oh, it's so political, and we saw it as actually the opposite. Keep the politics out of the boardroom.
Right.
Don't opine on these things if you're Coca-Cola or Delta, or pick your company.
Yeah.
And all these proxy, all the proxy advisory firms were just shoving these things down their clients' throats, and they could see them in the disclosures and everything, but the clients didn't want them. And there were enough. We're not saying every client didn't want to pursue have Chevron focused on pro-environmental initiatives while they were also trying to be a good oil and gas company, which seems a little odd, but there are some investors that want that. That's fine. We were just saying there were enough at the institutional retail base that they wanted to focus not on on true like stockholder capitalism, and we ended up being right, and it's become a very big business. But BlackRock and others have pulled back, and so you got to be very careful with the business model innovation sides. You can get enough of that market share, because as a financial investor, you don't get credit for creating a movement and then everyone
because everybody else
just copies you, and so people. But what it has created is a lot of brand loyalty, and then you can scale from that.
It must be incredibly frustrating when you sort of create this movement or have this thesis early before it becomes like common market knowledge, and then it gets replicated, and then now you're on to sort of the next thesis for the world or view for the world.
I actually think of it the other. I mean, obviously my job is to generate returns for my investors, which
But that is the game, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you do anything that's right, that's going to happen.
Right.
And so I sort of think, I just think of it as like very flattering and actually like validation that we had this thesis that was right. And obviously we want to capture as much market upside as we can based on that thesis. But I'm okay if it's okay. I mean, of course, there's a world in which you're the only one, and then no one ever changes behavior, and you can sort of extrapolate, and maybe that allows you to create a monopoly in what you're doing, but maybe the market's not as big, but maybe you actually can get more market share, and it's more of a there's 5 or 6 players, and maybe each specific case is so unique, but it's not obvious to me that having others copy you is actually worse. It might open up more of the market and like validate what you're doing and allow you to accelerate.
Right. I guess that this is where your thesis of spend time on 2 to 3 companies a year that you want to invest in, but the rest of the time you take the time to think about what's your worldview. You take the time to develop a thesis because you've proven it. Like that's how you've spotted the the rumbles of the world, right? Before they became big game, or the hellos of the world before, like, it became obvious that people were seeking religion. It's maybe that's the entire job.
I mean, look, that's how I am a liberal. I'm not supposed to say this in tech, but I'm like a liberal arts guy, and I'm not sure I'm a proponent of that anymore. But that's what I studied when I went to college.
Right.
In some ways, I had no business ever being a biotech investor.
Right.
But I was at a fund where we were looking at everything at a time when immuno-oncology companies were getting really interesting. Just biotech companies trying to cure cancer. And they were all using sort of an antibody-based therapeutic strategy, all trying to go after the same targets and bind to them in similar ways. All these companies had amazing scientific advisory boards, were backed by amazing tier 1 VCs from the Bay or San Diego or Boston, where the top biotech VCs tend to be. But they all like kind of, as someone who was coming at this from the outside, they all look pretty similar. Yeah. And so I said, look, we can't invest in this one because I don't see any differentiation. Yeah. I'm a little out over my skis on the science there to see anything. No. 2, we're not a big biotech fund where we're going to get multiple shots on goal. And that's, as I said earlier, we kind of only do a couple deals in a sector at a time. So that's not going to work. But I'm like really curious because, and just this is how it works. Like it's not like I said with Halla, we don't wake up and have like, we're smart, but we're maybe not that smart, right? I said, no, but I'm really curious. Okay. Cause there's dozens of these companies and they're all getting funded by really top funds. So, okay, what do I believe? Do I believe that people want to cure cancer? Yes. Do I believe that VCs want to back founders trying to cure cancer? Yes. So the CAGR of that is high. Do I believe that these companies don't seem differentiated? Yes. Okay. So what are all these companies doing? They're pursuing an antibody-based therapeutic strategy. I need to learn more about that. Started talking to people in my network, outside my network, founders, investors, academics, people in the government. And what I learned, this took a while, what I learned is that these companies are all really bad at making libraries of antibodies. And I ultimately found a company that was starting to become the gold standard that no one had heard of. Right. And it was like a weird company because it was a tools company, but there was real IP in the tool because you were ultimately giving this library of antibodies to your pharma customers or big biotech customers, and they were using it in their IP. And so it was kind of this interesting company that was like picks and shovels. And so for that reason, back then, a lot of biotechs wouldn't touch a company like that. But it was also like had some real IP, so you could get the upside if you did the business model innovation the right way. Yeah. And ultimately got conviction, and we invested in this company, and it's a massive business now. And that, like, it's as simple, like, it's like wisdom and access, but the way you sort of get to wisdom and access is like being nimble and curious, right? I was curious. That was the bottom thing. And I was like nimble enough. Nimble could also be like euphemism for just like having the time to like you can't be nimble if you're like, if you're like having pitch decks shoved down your throat.
Four pitch meetings a day. Yeah.
And so, and it was like the best thing ever. And we have, and this was at a prior fund, but at Narya, we have, 4 amazing biotech companies all doing something different. And so, now over a decade into investing in science, I'm never like the top scientific mind on the board or on the cap table, but
that's a feature.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we would never do a deal without like other investors who really understand the science.
Right.
So like,
of course.
Like we can get like 2 layers down, but someone who's like, getting all the way to the bottom, like we would team up with them, but then we can help on the business model innovation in ways that they can't, because they're probably more scientific, right, and less commercial.
And thank you for sharing that story. I think that's a great example of how spending. I actually like I've had an increasing belief in you need to be more concentrated in how you spend your time. And we had Christian Garrett on, who was also talking about like being concentrated in your bets, right? But then I was looking forward to you, like, because I heard you say that on another podcast too, but I wanted you to like maybe concretely like frame that. And I think that this was like a really good framing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
And it was a really good. Yeah, that was a good example.
well, and it's because it's kind of how the
Yeah.
sausage is made, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you have some
Yeah.
incredible aha moment.
Yeah.
It's ingesting information, changing your views, opening your mind to views, and and if you're just kind of on your computer all day or in meetings all day, you can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's intuitively, right? You think about that, and then everyone around you is doing something completely different, and you're like, "Wait, am I crazy, or is the world crazy?"
Yeah.
And
Look,
then,
I mean, you got.
and
Yeah.
you're unique in that, right? Like this.
I mean, you sort of have.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's hard because you end up having all these moments where you're doing something a certain way and no one else seems to be doing that.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, AI is a good example right
Yeah.
now. Everyone's investing in these AI platforms and the valuations are,
Yeah.
you know, very, 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 very high.
Yeah.
And yet we don't, you know, there might be some we're more bullish on than others, but we, you know, we didn't catch them when our fund had just launched, or then there's a lot of stuff that feels very commoditized.
Yeah,
and so I don't understand the
Yeah.
valuations.
Yeah.
And so you got to like stick to what you know.
Yeah.
And if you start doing things because other people are doing them, they might seem good in the short term, but they tend to backfire because you're just not prepared for sort of the unknowns.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, so this is like a favorite topic of mine, but like I'm glad like there's some serendipity here where you were at the All In Summit and there was this panel on higher education, right? And you were talking about you also like care about higher education. So can you talk a little bit more about why you care about higher education? What's the current state? Let's go over it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting debate. I guess I mean, I personally had a wonderful experience as an undergrad. I have 3 boys. My oldest is 5 years away from college, and so it's something we're thinking about. And I'm not sure. Or my gut is that 5 years from now we will still be in a world where going to college is the right path.
Is the default, yeah.
It's the default, and it's probably the right path for him.
Right. Why do you think it's the right path for him?
I think it's the right path for people that still don't have a clear enough view on what they want to do. They need to continue to have their ability to think independently nurtured, and need to sort of test more things that challenge them. And I think I'm not sure what the obvious thing to do. If you knew you wanted to go build a company, that a very specific thing.
And it might be different for each of your kids, I guess.
It could. Oh, of course. Yeah. Sure. But I just am speaking more generally. I think it depends. Like there's the right, in the Thiel Foundation support of these people, and obviously Draper U and other things like there's the right for college is not the. I mean, that's one of the things with this debate talked about. College is not the right thing for everyone, and so this idea of forcing people to go to college, especially if it's a lower tier college, and they're just doing it because that's what you're supposed to do, and all they're really getting out of it, it's not like a network they're getting out of it. It's not, they're not learning anything new really, and all they're getting out of it is debt. Yeah, like that doesn't seem like the good solution.
Right. At least for the top tier colleges, you get the network. And the time to explore. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the question is how much diversity of thought is there? How much support is there for independent speaking and debate? And I think at least the conversation that I heard in LA a couple of days ago was encouraging to suggest that we're more open to figuring out the student debt issue, kind of the focusing on diversity of thought, not other items. And also just like really promoting freedom of speech and encouraging, as long as you do it in a respectful way, all viewpoints. Like the right to protest, the right to speak, not the right to shout at people when they're speaking and shut them down, do it respectfully, not the right to take over parts of a campus, all these things. And so, I mean, I went to Dartmouth College. I think they're doing a good job at this. they're an Ivy, but they're much smaller, so it's different. But I think some of the other Ivies have not handled it the right way. And so it'll be interesting to watch. But I think overall, like many things, whether it's the government, whether it's got higher education's gotten way too bloated, and but it seems like the right conversations are being had at this point, and so I'm cautiously optimistic that some progress can be made. People using their endowments a little more to support students. I mean, some schools have always been really good at that, but others now dipping into it more for the students, not the teachers, the students, not extracurriculars, that sort of thing.
If like so you're saying like the top tier colleges, maybe even like, I actually think that even 50, 60 years from now, they'll probably be, it's an institution, and like institutions, institutional change takes time. And so for the next generation, like maybe in the growing up or going to college in the next 10-ish years, the lower ranked colleges where you're also going in debt, right? Where like maybe you realize that the purpose is like acquiring a network, then you're looking for these alternatives. Do you think that's going to become more common, or like is credentialism going to be still as important as it is today? And for most people, that is the right answer. Like my question is more around like the most ambitious, like for example, for me, I went to college for electrical engineering, and I wasn't a fit for engineering, but also, I ended up doing all sorts of other things except engineering, right? So it wasn't the right fit for me. So for that, people are the people that go to the Thiel Foundation for, grants. I'm actually surprised that model didn't become more popular, right? There may be some cases of it. O'Shaughnessy Ventures is doing it, and a few others, but there's not a lot of those models out there.
No, I think there's a lot of. I think there's a lot of risk, right? Because there's a certain archetype of founder that's ready to go.
Yeah, and not even founder. I'm saying like people. Let's take the example of your son, or like my cousin's son who lives in New Jersey right here. Right, he's now graduating college, and I don't think he was able to explore during college, and so he's thinking about grad school. I'm like, to explore, like if you want to explore.
Yeah, that's the grad school. The exploration of the grad school level gets like really tricky. And, you just there you're layering on.
Oh yeah, that's a completely different debate. But if we bring it back down to exploration, right? Are there other ways to explore? Is it like maybe if he tags along you and your job?
Yeah, look, I think secondments are really important. Those are done much more often in other countries. I think independent research and thought should be encouraged more. Obviously, every week our tools at like getting all the information in the world in your fingertips like are getting faster and more digestible. And so figuring out what you want to do is it's easier because when I was that age, that wasn't a thing.
Even exploring things you were curious about took longer, right? Like
I think you can ramp that up quite a bit, and so the positive view of this is you have more teenagers, becoming adults earlier because they use this technology to figure out what they want, what their purpose is in the world.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not a crazy idea because there's this whole other discussion, but this idea that like, people behave like babies and then kids because we treat them like babies and kids when they're born.
Yes.
Versus like actually just like letting them figure.
I was just going to bring that up.
Out,
yeah.
Right? There's a whole doctrine there, but so do
you think that's correct?
I think there's some sense to it, and of course, for most of history, being a 15-year-old was pretty senior.
Yeah, like
you're almost halfway through your life.
Yeah, you were taking over like continents at that age.
Can my son or people like him figure out what they want to do or sooner?
Yeah.
Yes. If we're going to be living into our hundreds at this point, should you be spending more time on education or at least figuring out what you want to do? Maybe, but maybe it's internships.
Yeah.
That's a good model.
A good one. Yeah.
As long as as long as there aren't dead ends. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to riff on.
Canadian universities do something called co-ops, and which I think Northeastern does too, and which I've seen to be a good model.
Yep.
Maybe.
I mean, there's lots of different options for it. I think that's but I think the fact that this debate is being had at the higher education level, and that they're not just talking about what they should be doing, but what happens upstream.
Yeah.
And then ultimately what happens downstream is important. And so are the high schools having this discussion? No. Or the elementary schools? No, because that's not, they're not motivated in the same way.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I think the government is. I think I'm pretty skeptical right now, but there's room for cautious optimism.
Yep. So like maybe to more on this, like treating kids like kids or treating kids like adults. I guess one of the missing parts is exposure, and like which informs their worldview, right? That's limited, and maybe that like with access to tools which give you faster, answer your queries faster, give you more exposure faster in terms of at least knowledge. That's like maybe one part, and maybe I'm oversimplifying. There are more parts, right? To informing your worldview and getting more exposure. And the other part is experiences, which is through something like internships or getting involved in the practical world, I guess, as early as possible in some way. But then around people who don't treat you like kids. That's the other challenge.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it certainly happens in other places. I think the right teachers, I mean, if you talk to an elementary school teacher or you observe them talk to students, they talk to them like their peers or something. There's just a way in which they do it. And so I've seen it, and it probably doesn't happen in a lot of places, but I think that's certainly something that's interesting.
This stays constant. I think like you also brought this up where the best way to train the younger investors on the team, especially at Mithril, was, treat them as counterparts, give them the same like sort of seat at the table.
Yeah. And, well, look.
Encourage like independent thinking, encourage exploration, and.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting as a parent, right? Where you've got a responsibility to your children, and to sort of help them, to foster innovation, take care of them, nurture them, all these things, inspire them. It's obviously a big job, but there's an element in which doing that, maybe one way of doing it better is to you also learn from them. I mean, my 6-year-old says like some really insightful things based on his perspective of the world that he has, because he's a 6-year-old.
Right.
And those, I mean, it's not like we sit down and I say, well, tell me what you think of these like macro events or something. That's not what we do. But like, but just by actually talking to him and not babying him, he can speak his mind, and I've learned from him, and that feedback loop has encouraged him to continue to ask questions and think.
Yeah. And
sometimes he's like asking questions, and it's a lot, but that's way better than someone who's staring at their screen.
Yeah. It's
like playing video games the whole time or something.
Yeah. The gamers might disagree with you.
Well, I think there's a time for that. There's a right amount of time for it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay, so we'll wrap here with a few questions. Maybe as actually you're saying, there's a lot to learn from the younger folks. All these people that you work with at Mithril, who've one became an Anduril co-founder, some are at 8 VC, some are leading. You mentioned one is leading the Linux Foundation, one is at DIU. Can you remember something very vividly where they taught you something?
I think that I was with not any one person specifically, but all of them, when I was coming into venture, I'd been a lawyer.
Right.
And so my initial, my practice had been to be very process oriented.
Right.
And at one point, someone said, "Why are you taking all those notes?"
Right.
I said, "Well, I just want to remember all the details."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, if you ask the right questions and listen, you'll remember, and then you can take the notes when you get out of the meeting."
Right.
And it's so core to how I worked over the past 12 plus years. It's second nature at this point. But, I had just kind of like those little things of just like getting me on board or saying, why do you want to look at this category? Like, why is this interesting to you? I gave some answers like, doesn't seem like it's interesting to you. Go look at, find something that's crazy. You've got the leash. You have a long leash here. Go, go look at something that we aren't looking at. And then I started doing that. And then we started investing in the companies I was sourcing. So it's like little things like that. If people just had been like, oh, that guy's a lawyer, he's an ex lawyer or whatever. That guy he's kind of weird or doesn't fit in here.
Yeah.
But because we all kind of didn't fit in our own way, we all did that with each other and it ended up being really good.
Yeah. Is there a book you've read recently that changed your mind about something, changed your worldview?
I read a lot. I don't. There's nothing that's changed my worldview recently. I find
or anything broadly that's changed your worldview that you recently.
I think there's the thing I spend a lot of my time on. Maybe this doesn't totally answer the question, but with the AI stuff, I don't know if it's changed my worldview, but there's just so much potential. And the more I've spent time with people using this technology, the more excited I am about the future.
Right.
And how many, and the problem is if you like talk to most people that aren't in our business, they're like very scared and very negative and pessimistic on it. It's going to be a dystopian future.
Yeah.
None of us are going to have jobs. And I guess what I've been trying to sort of change people's worldviews on that more than, I don't know if there's anything that's changed my worldview recently, but I think that's a media problem and people aren't having the conversation. So that's one thing. And I guess from a lot of the reading I've been doing, maybe this is should be like a motivational poster in like a generic corporate office or something, but I feel like people are much more similar than dissimilar, and reading more stories about all sorts of exceptional people, whether it be business, whether it's overcoming hardship or being successful in business or politics or teaching or innovating, whatever it is, the more you meet people and read about stories about actual people, the more you realize that we're I know we're not that different. Everything just feels so polarizing right now. And so it hasn't changed my worldview, but it's reinforced my my optimism, not just in what technology can do, but just where just getting people back together.
If you can sit down, just have a conversation with people, you'll find more similarities.
Sitting here, sort of just the day after 9/11 anniversary and everything, you sort of come back to that and just how united we were as a country then. And I just think there's a lot of positive to come here, and I'm excited for that.
Is there this is a tough one. Let me know if you don't want to keep it. But is there a conspiracy theory you believe in? Or like something most people disagree with you on? Is it that you recently had a discussion on? I asked Oren this. He had a very fascinating answer, which I'll tell you offline.
No, that's probably not one I would comment on, just given.
Okay. For Okay, we'll wrap up with what's a message for aspiring builders who are like, thinking about starting companies in 2025, or aspiring investors who are thinking about, venturing into this career, or people who are generally looking to work in tech.
I think, and this is more with the founder lens on it, but I think actually like having something you really, really, really care about, and having that motivate you is the most important thing. I guess it doesn't have to just be about founders. It's like if you really care about healthcare, go work at a healthcare company. Don't just go to an AI platform because that's where everyone is going. If you have some idea and those companies don't exist, like go build it. There's so much. There's so many. The access to capital now is like better than it's ever been. Doesn't mean you'll get it, but why not try? Especially if you're. That's the whole point of being, young and entrepreneurial. You like you can be relentless. Like live with your parents if they'll take you, or live in a hacker house or whatever it is. But just like. Go feel like I did the opposite. Like what I did was I went to college and I did well. And so I took the LSAT and I did well. And so I went to law school. I did well. So I went to a law firm and I picked my head up and I was like, whoa, this is nothing like what I want to be doing. Yeah. Why did I do this? Yeah. And I don't, did that help me get to here? Or would it have been better had I just thought more independently? So it's like, know yourself, like do whatever you can to really know yourself. And then everything else will be like pretty easy after that.
Colin, thanks for coming on the show. I learned a lot, and I think this is going to be a great episode. A lot of people are going to have a lot of insights. There are a lot of questions I had, but maybe we'll do a round two.
Sure. Let's do it. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.